The thing that got me into this whole field of research was an anomalous word in the book of Genesis. I've been a preacher for more than 30 years. I've studied and taught through the book of Genesis many, many times in churches all around the world, and I've trained pastors in the skills of interpreting texts. So I've long known about this anomalous word. Well, finally, I allowed myself the time to sit down and really drill into what was going on. Genesis uses two words for God. One is Elohim and one is Yahweh or Jehovah. Now, Yahweh is the holy name given to Moses in a time centuries or millennia after all the action described in the stories of beginnings. So the fact that the word Yahweh appears in those much older stories, that clues us that we're not reading the original version of the stories. The stories are being retold by someone after the time of Moses. Now, there's a broad consensus among biblical scholars that the current version of the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, was edited or redacted sometime in the 6th century BCE, and that the redactor, by putting the name Yahweh into these older stories, the stories that Abraham and Sarah had brought with them, was telling the reader to regard them as God's stories. And by using the later name, he's also telling the reader this is not the original version. Originally, they were Elohim stories. Now, that word Elohim is a very interesting word because it's a plural form word. It often exhibits plural behaviors. Let us make the humans to look like one of us. We don't want them to become too much like one of us, etc. The word Elohim often takes plural verb forms. It's sometimes translated as God, but in other places it gets translated as false gods, or demons, or angels, or chieftains, or land barons. So why this enormous elasticity in the word's meaning? Well, again, we have to go back to the roots of the word and ask, why is it used that way? And why does it behave like a plural? When you look at its component parts, the word Elohim means the powers or the powerful ones. Now, when you read Genesis translating the word that way, the texts change and suddenly line up with the Sumerian texts. One by one, they confirm each other's stories. And it's very clear they're not stories about gods. They're stories about the powerful ones in the Bible and the sky people, the Anunnaki, in the Sumerian tablets.
And there won't be any doubt in anybody's mind, because this thing's going to look like a big red dragon, exactly like all the ancient Sumerians and the Chinese and all the rest of them that had documented this thing's passing before. It didn't look like a white ball or a snow cloud or nothing. It looked like a big red iron oxide dust cloud with a superheated star in the middle of it. And I mean, and that's what we've seen. So, I don't care what anybody else says. There's a possibility. There's more than one thing out there. I watched it through the Hubble Space Telescope, and when this thing looked like it was across the street, the Hubble got cut off and they encrypted it, and that was the end of any transmissions we had to watch. And we know that the Hubble, in order to be in the shadow of the Earth, had to be at an angle, and so that meant it was looking downward, and this thing was coming up underneath of us. And I tell you the honest to God truth, I personally think this thing is real close to us right now. Back in the 1950s, most people aren't aware of it, but there was a scientific storm in America all through the late 50s about this thing out there in space, because the astronomers were all watching it, and that was back when they weren't afraid to talk about it. It was in the science magazines. I mean, I had a subscription to, like, Popular Science, and hell, it was on the front cover of the magazine one day in, like, 1961. And I was really excited when I saw it, because here's this giant red planet on the horizon of the California coast, and a humongous tidal wave coming in towards the coast, and having grew up in the mountains of the Sierras, and this thing in the magazine, it said this tidal wave coming in was going to be at least 3 miles high, and I went in and showed it to everybody in the house, and they laughed, and they said, look, It says right here, there's nothing to worry about. It won't be here for another 50 years. Hey, guess what? That 50 years has came and gone. And this baby's out there in the sky. They've been watching it. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I really am nervous about. I think this thing's got a planet like ours circling it. This is its own solar system. We're about to have a solar system come through the middle of our solar system. This can't be good. But unfortunately, it looks as though that's what's going to happen. Hopefully nothing in this mess will hit us.